Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome to the AC Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Today with us, we have Luke Johnson. He's the founder and head of growth at Deep Space, where he's on a mission to make digital construction radically easier and far more connected. With over 20 years of experience in architecture, BIM, and VDC, Luke's journey spans from hands-on coordination and class detection to leading product innovation in AI-powered construction management. A Dynamo developer, Revit expert, and Autodesk elite alumni, he's built a reputation for blending technical depth with strategic vision. At Deep Space, Luke helps teams across sectors from hospital to airports, building smarter, collaborate better, and deliver faster. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
You have an impressive bio. Like you have done it all, I guess. We can say that.
Yeah, I mean most of it's true. No, no, it's been a fun journey. I never would have thought coming just into drafting because I kind of left high school into architectural drafting. I never would have thought I would end up here. So some of the things you just take one step to the next, and you see where you end up, I guess.
That's really interesting, and we can start from there. Like let's say after college, what was in your mind? Like you said, drafting, but your dream was being a drafter, or what was the dream?
I mean, I always loved technology, and I always want to learn new things, and I loved building things. But I mean, the dream was, just to probably become an expert. You're starting out from zero, from nothing, and learning AutoCAD and architecture in general. But I always wanted to kind of push the limits of what was possible, and just keep learning and keep sharing, and that's kind of driven me through a lot of those stages of the journey.
That's great, and I'm just curious regarding to what you just said about technology. How you ended up coding? Like it was something that you had to do it to be more efficient. You wanted to do it, or how was that big first step?
Yeah, it depends how far back you want to go because I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so you grew up in the age where you just started to get a computer in the house and try and figure out how it works. And I remember I did some really silly things in the early days, like in Windows 3.1, I moved all of the files into like folders, A, B, C, D, like this. And then the Windows wouldn't boot anymore because I moved all the Windows files into the W. So anyway, I learned a lot of things from mistakes from when I was a child. But when I went into actual working in architecture, it comes down to just not wanting to do things the same old repetitive way and trying to figure out, is there a way to do this faster? Can I leverage my time to build something that makes me exponentially quicker at doing something or a better quality output? And so that's how I then went into that kind of coding world. Dynamo was really just the entry point for me, honestly, because it was visual. It connected to Revit, which I already understood. But from Dynamo, then went into learning more Python, loved Python, and still a lot of Deep Space is built on Python and microservices. So I loved that journey just from making a practical application that helps me do my job. That's really what drove me into that coding space.
That's really interesting, but also the fact that you already had a base. It was you were already curious. Like when you mentioned about, I don't know, moving folders of like Windows folders or, or files, you need to be curious for that. Like open the hood, and not everybody opens the hood of a car and start messing around with the parts, right? Like,
True.
so I feel that you already had that, right? To be able and just use Dynamo and keep going. I feel that nowadays things are getting easier with AI to learn those kind of tools, but in the early days when Dynamo most of the times was just failing and not, I don't know if you remember that, but in the early days
crashing all the time.
there was not a lot of documentation. Most of the things failed, and it was extremely tough. I don't know if you had the same experience.
Definitely. And I think the difference back then, we didn't have the AI, but we had the community. And so you had some really generous people in that community who were building things and sharing things and on the forums. And, same with Revit in the early days. The community is how we all shared the knowledge. And it was same with Dynamo when it was not as polished as it is now, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The community or Jeremy Tamik, like whatever he's tried to find, Jeremy has done it. I don't know how.
Yeah, Jeremy, yeah. But yeah, the community has changed a lot. I guess there's a lot more younger people coming out into the industry who are more digital native, and so I think they do expect certain things to be there and just working for them. So it's kind of a different community now as well.
Interesting. What do you think has changed from like the community in general, or what are the new generations bringing into this space now that you mentioned it? And
yeah, I mean, you've got these different eras, time periods, and kind of, if you're old like me and kind of in the 40s, you've been through the PC kind of coming into the house. But then if you're been born in the 2010s, you kind of were born with a phone in your hand, and so information was very accessible, and things were fast, and things worked, and so their kind of thing is to more about lifestyle or more, and I'm being very general here, but it's more about the mission, and they're excited about being part of something that's big, or and feels like less interested in building things from scratch. But it's very general, very stereotype. I know.
No. I think I partially agree on that, and I do think that for them having a phone since they were born, basically, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I feel that they manage information really well because they're used to a huge amount of information flowing through their hands all the time, but they're not as good as dealing with things that are not working, right? Because UIs are polished now, everything should work and should work really fast. But then if there is a problem, you're not used to popping up the hood and messing around with the engine. And I think that's the differentiator. Is they're really good on some stuff, but when they have to deal with really deep technical things, they're like, what? This should be easy. And it's like, well, it's not.
But then AI is kind of making it so it is. So it's kind of like giving them the leg up. And the just the knowledge base is so huge that they can access, and we all can, that it's kind of changing where our skill sets need to sit, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the thing that is most fun for me, some people think it's not, is that everything is changing all the time. So it's I think it's like 10 or 20 years ago, the playing field was completely different. Like if you were an older guy or a younger guy, like experience was really important because of the knowledge it was in your mind. But nowadays, it's like the playing field, it's even for everybody. It's like knowledge is not as important. It's still important for sure, but it's not as important as it was because you can search and process anything with AI super fast. So things are evolving so much, and it's interesting because there are huge opportunities appearing every day, I guess.
100%.
I don't know if you see it the same way.
I do, but it's funny that definitely affects people in the knowledge worker kind of industries so much, because anything that's content creation or accessing knowledge or creating things is completely changed and evolving so fast. Whereas out on a construction site, they're still mixing mortar and they're still laying bricks and they're still swinging a hammer. So there's just, in AEC, the C part, the construction part is quite interesting because, the impacts of AI is kind of yet to be realized.
It seems it's like everything in our industry, not in a bad way. Everything that happens in our industry, it's always delayed. Like the processes are so long, the projects are so long. Like even the real estate industry, right? When the markets go up, we go up 2 or 3 years after. When they go down, we go down 2 to 3 years after it. So everything takes a little bit more of time, which it can sound like a bad thing, but I think there is an opportunity there because you can see how other industries have dealt with a lot of processes or new technologies like AI, and it's easier for you to implement it. I don't know. I think it's me trying to be optimistic here.
No, it's true. And obviously, like construction in general is probably, heading into that manufacturing, process oriented kind of way of working, aviation, and things like that. But construction is just such a unique thing. There's so many variables and things you can't control that just make it a unique challenge, to deal with.
No, absolutely. And related with that, being the fact that we can say, at this point, we can say you're kind of a expert on data on the AC, right? Like, given the fact, the nature
I love data. I should have a hat on that says I love data. Yeah.
Data legend. We can find a hat for you, something like that. How do you think data it's impacting not only construction but the AC in general?
Oh, it's changing. It's just changing the way the projects are designed and delivered. Because if you can access historical information that helps you to make better decisions, if you can access it fast in the right context, it gives you like a superpower, because you're not reinventing everything from scratch. You're not dealing with the situation as if it's a new situation, because you or your business or someone in the world has dealt with it before, and it's been recorded, and here's the situation, here's how it came about, here how it's solved. That's what data really means to me. And obviously it's not just a table or Excel files or something. It's like complex data with relationships and the time dimension, and then the machine learning aspects. That's where it really becomes so powerful.
That's really interesting, and something that not an expert in data like you, but something that for me it's kind of a question that maybe is in other industries, like I don't know, we can put it like really simple industries, like I don't know, fixing a hammer, fixing a car or something like that. There is a lot of data and even a lot of YouTube videos of people doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can extract that and implement it in whatever problem you're having with your own car. In the construction industry, sometimes all that data has been created, but it's being kept inside each construction company. How do you feel or think that's changing? Do you think that's going to change in the future, or is there going to be a way for companies to get benefit of the whole industry in general, or is it still going to be a silo within each construction company?
No, I do think that in general processes are improving and getting shared across construction. Construction probably in different regions and different size businesses, they have different ways of thinking. In Australia, we've noticed if a builder is like a mid-size builder, like mid-size construction, they're quite happy to share their process, share it with their peers, look for new ways of doing things. They have a nice collaborative way. Whereas if you look at tier ones and maybe in some other regions, there can be a very secretive aspect of this is how we do things and it's a secret. I don't think that has a real future. But But you make a good point that even inside a construction business, there's so many silos of information, and fundamentally, this was a problem that I saw, in the earliest projects I worked on, and right through till now. Just the mismanagement of data, because it's fragmented. It's fragmented across people, across locations, across software tools, and that is a big problem because you can never get the transparency. You can never get the answer you need because there's no technology layer that's letting you grab it all, and that's really something I'm very passionate about fixing.
We could say that was the reason why you started Deep Space.
Yeah. Michael, my co-founder, we worked on these large construction projects. The largest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere we worked on together, and we were doing coordination and modeling and asset data handover. And it was actually at the moment in time where we had to do model auditing. So we had to check the models based on certain criteria, that someone in the team said to me, "Look, Luke, you can build something to do this automatically." So I started to do it and built it out in Dynamo originally and Excel, and then it started expanding into a database format and Power BI, etc. A lot of the journey that many of your listeners would have been on, but that is where Deep Space was born. It was born in the fact that the problem was too big to solve with traditional means. We needed to store the data better in a structured way. We need to be able to access it. We needed to be able to capture it out of 3D files. We need to be able to analyze it. All those concepts are where it was really created from, and it's obviously grown since then.
That's so interesting. And how was the first step? Because like you mentioned, you were working on a huge hospital, but that I think I work on that hospital too.
Yeah, probably.
Which one it was?
The Adelaide Hospital, the Royal Adelaide.
Yeah. I was working at a company called Buoyancy at the time, and we were doing a lot of work for them as well.
Awesome. Yeah. It pulled in so many skilled people from around the world because it was a Revit mandate, to deliver in Revit. And I think the project started on Revit 2011 or something, and by the time it was finished, we were on 2018 or something like that. So it went through a lot of things, through the project.
Yeah, it was huge. I remember they were even modeling the beds and all the outlets with all the gases, and I remember it was kind of a big challenge.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
But then going back to what I was saying regarding the first step is like you were working on this huge hospital and you had these skills because you were like implementing Dynamo and translating data into a database. When do you decide like, all right, it is time for me to start Deep Space, and how was that first step?
That's really hard, and I think if some of your listeners are working in consultancies and they have a day job, and this was probably the hardest part was, we had a BIM consultancy and it was quite successful. We were quite busy, but you're selling your time, right? And so in parallel, we're trying to build the Deep Space platform, and you can never really just jump all in. It's very difficult to make that switch. But anyway, the way that it came about was we met a really good mentor who helped us understand, at what point you can kind of start to basically go to seek investment and kind of make that big decision. So we were selling Deep Space. We reached a certain, level of annual recurring revenue. And it was kind of like, now's a moment in time. We're either going to go for this or it's not going to really accelerate and may just become a tool for us. And that was the big decision. And obviously we went for it, and we're on that exciting journey now.
Interesting. But at the beginning, I bet that the first thing was, besides coding all the platform, is finding your first client. Like who were you targeting at the beginning? It was like general contractors, subcontractors, architects. Who were you targeting at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we had built it primarily for ourselves, and we were working for general contractors, as a consultant. But we were we were working on site. We were in site office for like a year and a half on some of these projects. So we were very close to different things happening, right from the programming or the project scheduling part, right through to 4D and the clash detection. So we were in all of those different places, and we could start to use our system to kind of create reports and visuals and things for the builder. And that's really where we, it almost like engaging us as a consultant. You got Deep Space, and that's how it kind of worked for a while, until eventually we could go to people and say, hey, you buy Deep Space and you don't need us as a consultant anymore. That was kind of the journey, I guess.
That's really interesting, and I want to zoom in there, because there's I think there is a big discussion everywhere where building a tool to use it internally versus building a tool to sell it, right? To do a software as a service company.
Mm-hmm.
Did you change? Do you have to change anything going from using it just internally to sell it as a tool? What was the process going from one to the other?
The tech evolved so much, and like you start by hacking things together, and it kind of works, and at some point it has to become robust and scalable and secure. And so at various points you're doing big jumps in the actual tech stack and kind of migrating things from one thing to the next. And one of the biggest ones we did was to migrate away from a traditional database to more of a hybrid warehouse kind of system. Had to happen, because we needed more storage, faster storage. We needed to be able to be multi-regional. But those are the things that happen as you come out of having a, let's say like an enthusiast tool to having a SaaS product. That's the journey you go on. The other part of the journey is you pivot quite a lot. Like we originally thought, we built the BIM tools. It's really great for BIM managers. It helps general contractors, big projects. We thought this is going to be, a lot of work in here for Deep Space. And then basically along the journey, you kind of realize there's not enough of a TAM in pure BIM automation. We have to keep growing the product. It has to grow bigger. It has to do more for it to become really valuable for, all sides of construction businesses. Because a lot of the businesses we work with now don't even have 3D models. And so there's quite an evolution, for us.
That's interesting, and I feel what you're mentioning is something that happens to many startups, where they have an amazing idea of an amazing technology, but then when they want to implement it in real life, so some guys are like, yeah, I don't know, automating schedules with AI. It's like, but we don't even have a standard of schedules, so how are you going to automate it if we don't even have a standard ourselves? And I do feel that those companies might be successful in a future where everything works really well in the industry, but nowadays, like you said, a lot of things are still manual, or there are no standards or processes. And what you brought about, like, hey, we had to work with companies using 3D models, but also working with companies that don't even have 3D models. And I think it sounds like going backwards, but I think it's the way to actually meet clients where the pain is, not where you want the pain to be. I don't know.
Because the other thing you're looking for in a startup is repeatability. You're looking for a common problem that many people share. And so, the BIM kind of management problem was real, and it was on massive projects, but it's very tied to what we talked about before, like in the industry, ebbs and flows. And if there's no massive projects, there's no necessarily need for that. But there's always construction happening at a certain level globally. And so there's always that problem of them trying to just manage their construction business, trying to win work, trying to do the work, manage the subcontractors, hand it over to the client. Now, all these things are just always happening. And so that's the exciting part I've been doing lately is many of my conversations I'm having are very similar in terms of what we're talking about, the problems that I'm hearing, what people want to do about it, the desire to improve. And so that's when you're kind of starting to go, okay, we are starting to have product market fit. This is when it's exciting, you know.
That's really interesting. And also the fact that the reality is like, I do feel in general, right? Like I work on the tech side of the industry, and we all want to work with the tier ones, like the ACOMs of the world, right? Like we all love to work with those type of companies, but the reality is like I think it was a Price or Accenture, one of these big firms that did a study, and it's like tier one companies in the construction industry. It's only 1% of the industry.
Mm,
Like 99% of the world, it's small and medium businesses, not large ones. So it's just
correct.
interesting that we are all trying to go for that 1%, but the reality is that 99 of the industry is not that. And
Exactly.
I don't know, it's a hard thing to learn, I guess.
Yeah. And you have more in the USA, but in Australia, there's literally only maybe 20, 25 tier one companies. Like there's not that many. And so, you know, if you disqualify a few of them because they're not looking for change, you don't have a very big addressable market, you know. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in the US, there are a little bit more, but there are many more. There are smaller,
Yeah.
medium. So even
Thousands.
and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And the market is huge. So if you think is the same in the US, it's the same thing.
Mm,
And you get more competition, right? Because everybody's trying to sell those companies. So I think it's a lesson that also many startups learn, where they're trying to get that market fit, and then suddenly it's
mm,
like, oh shoot, I have already spoken with all the big ones, and I don't have enough clients, or I cannot grow if I don't start speaking with the smaller ones.
mm.
So that's pretty interesting. How about regions? You guys are only working with Australia, or it's you have clients all over the world, and how's that with
We have had clients all over the world. So New Zealand, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia. We have a data center we set up in Saudi Arabia for some of the large projects over there. So we do, but like honestly, we're really trying to own that Australian market right now. It's kind of a vacuum here for some of these tools, and so we think that if we can just fine tune it for the next maybe 5-6 months here in Australia, we'll be coming to the States and we'll be making a more of a push into other regions at that point.
interesting? Do you think they're, given the fact, I know you're focusing on Australia, but given the fact that you have worked with other regions, do you think there are significant changes in the way they manage processes and data?
I do. It's more to me about let's call it BIM maturity or digital maturity, whatever you want to call it. Regions really vary wide, very widely. Australia and New Zealand had a close fraternity. I felt like we had a really good community of BIM people who were kind of sharing knowledge. Some of the built and RTC conferences were started in Australia, things like that. So, that was an exciting time. But like, it was when I started working with Revista, actually, I started to see America was not the same. In a lot of ways, they didn't have BIM consultants and they didn't have the same style of things as, let's say, 10 years ago. And so I could see already that there's lag or a difference between regions. Some of the Asian countries are following closely to Australia. Obviously, Saudi Arabia, the investment there has accelerated kind of the maturity level through bringing in expats and things. And then UK, is kind of a different thing again. They're very process oriented. They love to document things. A lot of these very detailed ISO standards and things come out of there. I personally don't love that stuff so much, but they do.
It's like, yeah, no, I agree on that. Like no standards at all. It's a problem sometimes, yes, but too many standards, it's also a
Mm,
big problem. It's like
mm,
it's like right now we're calling a IFC exporter,
yeah.
because client wants an IFC exporter with certain specifications, and man, like dealing with AFC is like so many structures that don't make any sense. It's like
Uh-huh.
the way you manage the geometry and stuff that like it's like you cannot tell me that I need to do it this way. It's not going to affect the user at all. But there's some standard for that, and it's not compliance if you don't do it that way. So it's just interesting that never seen a standard that it's so rigid like IFC in general. Like
Oh yeah, and a very old file format, text based in a way, very very complicated, Yeah.
yeah, it's like I get it that you don't want to start from scratch, but I think it's time for them to just throw everything to the garbage and just take whatever
Well,
works
yeah.
and work with a more modern
Yeah.
format.
And there are a
It's
few
just
of those coming through now, and they different ones. Because yeah, even the step format also seems to be gaining popularity as well.
yeah, step or even like I think it's bluffers from Google or GLTF or USD.
Yep.
Like there are a lot of
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
variables that at least none of them is just a text file. It's a reality.
With
Yeah.
no real structure, just a lot of pointers between the different lines.
Yeah, I mean, I like that there is a little bit of a structure. Like IFC, what I like, I think the only thing that I do like is, all right, every building is gonna have, a site is gonna have
Oh yeah,
different
the
buildings
standard
and stories.
classifications.
Like the
Yeah.
classification, the base classification makes sense because it's something that every building in the world is gonna have. But I feel that's the only thing. Then you can just do it as you want. Like as long as the data makes sense, as long as the
Yeah.
mesh it's a closed mesh or
Yeah.
basic
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Not I don't know. Sorry, I took this time to just
No, I
have
love
comments about
talking
IFC.
about IFC. Yeah, it's fun.
But if we go to Saudi Arabia, I think it's kind of the opposite. It's like those guys. It's just interesting what is happening there because it's like those guys were really behind a couple of years ago, but now they are investing so much and speeding up so much that it's just interesting that they're trying to do it all. So it's also an interesting experiment where like UK it's like really structured, the US is in between, and maybe Australia, and then these guys in Saudi Arabia going like all in. So it's also really a fun experiment, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But going back to deep space, just also curious on how hard it is to manage all, given the fact that we have speaking about IFC and all that, how hard it is to manage data from many different projects, different scales, different companies. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, you have to design like a schema, to use a technical word, that can accommodate all those different things, but is still not too strict that it can't be used. And this is what, the IFC is a good example because, you can't bring a project management tool to someone and say, you've got to change everything that you do and you must do it this way. It just cannot happen. It's too hard. And so you have to design it so, for example, we can ingest any data of any structure is one of the tools that we have. And so there's no rules in that tool. You can just upload any Excel and it'll read it all and index it, become part of the AI, and we can use it. And then as the projects and things build up, we start to say, well, these are common data structures, and one might be the way to store a project schedule, whether it comes from P6 or Microsoft Project. And so we will design like a common data structure that's proprietary, but then we're able to read and translate these other formats into it. And so Deep Space now has its own internal language for program, and other things like that. So spent a lot of time and a lot of years documenting, building that up, making it robust, because that's probably, one of our main bits of IP is how we have logical, relational ways of storing construction data, but it's still not too opinionated ultimately.
That I feel that's so interesting, and and the fact that even if you had all the money and all the developers in the world, the reality is that to create a schema that I bet it was not defined just one time and you kept it, but
Keeps
it
it
needs
up.
to evolve.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And
correct.
that
Correct.
takes so much time. So for companies like yours, I feel the value there is just immense. And the platform could be great, but the value on the schema, how to treat the data, that's huge, man. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah, and we give a lot of credit to our developers, particularly our lead developer, Charlotte, who is basically come out of kind of data science degree in university. And so, I had kind of got the schema to a point, and it was kind of one of those moments in time where it was kind of okay. But, she's come in and rationalized a lot of things. And now, we can deploy a light version of the schema or a mid-size one or one that's full with every feature enabled. And, we can adapt it then. So it's a lot more scalable now.
Interesting. And how is that going on that specific moment where you're the founder and it's like cannot code anymore. I cannot code as much as I want because I need to like like your position is like have to focus on growth and getting clients. How,
Mm.
how is that
Mm.
transition for you?
It's very hard because, like, I think, like a lot of us, we love the building things, we love the coding, we love seeing it happen. But ultimately, you have to deploy your skills somewhere else, and you have to find people who have high level of ownership to give it to. And that's, to be honest, I'd say that's one of the fundamental challenges of a startup is finding those first few hires who are going to almost have a founder mindset. Like they're going to love what they do and they're going to want to push things and they're going to have kind of agency and ownership. They're unique individuals, but like it just completely changes the business. You're no longer telling people and managing people. Those people are out there. They understand what you're trying to achieve and they've become part of this, movement for change. It's really cool.
Yeah. No. I completely agree. And like, I mean, you could manage them all the time, but I'm 100% sure not going to be successful if you do that. Um,
Mm,
but the reality is that it's also hard because like you finding the right people, it's hard. Those are
mm,
unique individuals who are really good at what they do and really passionate and it's hard and sometimes you don't even know until you hire them. So
correct.
it's also a process that it's not about the money or it's just about time and the company evolving itself to have the right people and keep them there. I don't know.
Mm. And like obviously startup teams are getting a lot leaner now. There's less heads in general. There has to be, and the tools are better for collaboration and AI and development. And so that's makes it even more important, right? You can have nobody who's kind of um, creating problems or, slowing everybody down. Everybody has to kind of be, heading in that same direction.
No, absolutely. And I'm kind of the guy who loves the smaller teams, and my
Mm.
social battery is so small that I love to work with few people only.
Okay.
It's a reality. It's
Yeah.
who I am. But for me, it's just it's great how when you used to need something like I don't know, even changing the color of a button, right? Like you need to change the color on the CSS and find the CSS and like nowadays with AI, it's just insane
It's
because
like
even
this.
if,
Mm.
yeah, it's like just tell me where I need to change it. Even if you don't want AI to code it for you, it's like
Mm.
just the fact that you can ask the question and find it in a second. It's huge, man. It's huge,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I've seen all the devs improve their speed sometimes by I don't know 10 times faster. It's just insane for certain things. It's just
Mm. Mm.
insane, and I think that's gonna also help evolve companies and the industry itself is gonna see a lot of benefits from it.
100%. Yeah. And obviously we're using it internally for a lot of things, but then we're also now going, how do we deploy this into construction, into that industry that things are messy and things are not always the same and there's a lot of silos and you know the concept of AI is some of them don't even know what it is, and so you're like this is an assistant. It's going to help you. It's going to do this. It's going to act while you sleep. It's going to de-risk the project, whatever it is. But basically, you're boiling that AI down to just what its core value is. That's really important.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And now that you're speaking about like deploying AI on deep space, what's coming for deep space in the next I don't know, 5 years, 3 years? What's coming for you guys?
Yeah. So we've in the last few months, from maybe 6 months, we have made that real push to build out a lot of product so that we have a holistic project management tool from managing subcontractors and like the very earliest inception of a project through budgeting, through cost, through design management, through to handover. And so we've built out all of these modules, and we're now in the process of like fine-tuning the implementation phase with some of our customers, making it so we can go to that business. There's a fast process of migration off existing tools. There's a training process. And so that's probably a really important phase that we're in now, of like refining each of these pieces, making them all work together. In terms of, bigger features that we're doing, like we've already got our AI able to read drawings and analyze them, but, going further with that and helping us to do, some perhaps estimation or takeoffs with the 2D drawings, maybe markup tools. Like basically, we really don't want people jumping out to other point solutions to solve problems. So we're trying to figure out what that feature set is that's just critical, making sure we have it all ticked off. And that's the exciting part. So we recently shipped all our cost tools and budgeting tools. So it's funny, like the BIM thing was really, the BIM tools we had were really powerful, but like as soon as you add dollars into a SaaS platform, everything changes, because people see now that it's going to help them to manage their business and manage their projects, because there's, it all comes back to margins and risk and retention and all these type of things. And so that was a big shift for us and put us into a different ball game, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel it's also a big challenge, because like you're trying to be an end-to-end solution, which it's absolutely doable. It's just there is so much to do that deciding, like you said, what's the critical features, what the critical path for them to be able to do everything here. It's as a founder, it's tempting because you want it all, right? Like I want it all, and you have to pick based on your clients' feedback, I guess.
Correct. That's what's changed, I guess, as well, is like when you are building your own tool in an enthusiast mindset, you are just building what you want to build. And I remember one person told me once, don't fall in love with your own creation, because, you have to, if you want to build a business, it has to serve the customer. And so that's what, like I said before, we're now talking to the same type of customer with the same problems, and we're now matching the product to those needs. And so it's no longer about what Luke wants anymore. It's about them,
Yeah, and it's painful. I can, for me, I think it's a painful transition, because building whatever you feel it's the problem, it's such a fun thing to do. But then when somebody comes and says, I want it this way, it's so painful, because you might be considered like, this doesn't make any sense, but this is the way it goes, and you have to do it. And it's a grown-up problem, I think, because it's not a kid playing with toys anymore. It's like, yeah, it's work, and I need to do whatever I have for my clients.
Very true. Yeah.
All right. I don't want to take a lot more of your time. I know it's really, really late in Australia, so I appreciate you being here, Luke. But before we wrap this up, can I ask you a couple of ping pong questions?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with, what do you think is the next big thing in the AC?
I actually think one of the next big things will be something that starts to disrupt Revit. And I don't think it's going to happen quickly, but I think some of the cloud-based modeling tools, things that are in the web, are going to start to shift, the way things happen. And so content creation, design, Revit and Navisworks and P6 and these other tools come from a previous generation where you have to be an expert and you've got to spend years and the product is complicated. I think, like we talked about before, the new generation of workers needs something that's different, something that works, something that's simple, something that's functional. And I think, we can see some of those emerging now, some of those tools.
No, that's a great answer. The next one is, if you could collaborate with any person in history, which person would you choose?
I think it would either be probably Einstein or probably maybe one of the inventors of like electricity. Because I just think some of those guys, they had just ideas that were so fundamental, which changed the world. Electricity, I think to me is kind of the one, those guys who, because there was one guy who did like the AC and one who did the DC, but they're basically, the world was never the same after that. Once we had electricity in the home, and so I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could tell me a great AC software besides DeepSpace that we know is great, but second AC tool that you like.
Yeah, I do love Revisto still. As a coordination, 3D model viewer, issue tracker, clash detection, the augmented reality. I think it's really just very smooth experience, and it works really well.
All right. And last but not least, what's your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
I like Falling Waters. I think it's just iconic design. I've never been there, but I'd like to, and I'd also like to visit, some of the more historic structures in kind of Europe and things, but haven't been there yet. Maybe in the future.
All right. It's good that you didn't say a Sydney Opera House, which is amazing, but it's too easy for Australian to say that. All right. And before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about DeepSpace or contact you as well?
Yeah, best to just reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to catch up and have a chat. Or the main website is deepspacegroup.ai. And yeah, be awesome to kind of just hear how people are going in the industry and if they're having the same problems that we've seen.
Thank you so much, Luke. This has been a really nice conversation, and I'm glad to get all the knowledge you have in at least a couple of minutes. So thanks so much for your time, and I will love to hear more about DeepSpace in the future. All right.
Thanks for having me, mate. It was great fun.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.